Welcome back, Astrid. Are there any questions?
Yes, we have 2 questions. The first question is, if every being has the truth inside, why are there so many problems?
Because they don't see the truth, because of the vision they have on life. I tried to explain that in the beginning, and you have the vision on life, a materialistic vision where you see all the problems as isolated things and not as a result of the mentality. So another thought that is because we are contributing reality to Maya, to illusion. And we think that this outer world, this world of phenomena, this world of manifestation is the real world. But as Plato says, in fact, it is a shadow from something behind it, from a more real world. The reality is not the outer world. But if you focus your mind on the outer world, then you think that in the outer world lies happiness, then you focus your thoughts and your actions on the outer world, and the result is the world we have today. Then you are looking for power, for luxury, for money, and then you don't take into account your neighbor because it's me, it's important. That's the most important. But if you see the underlying life behind all phenomena, then you realize that me is not the most important, but we, all of us, that is the reality. And if you change your melody just a little bit, it will change the society already, and then you will come to a much better solution for the problems than when you are focused on the outer world with all the selfishness that it takes with it.
Okay. Yeah, the second question elaborates on that, and it says, when you see yourself in everything, as you explained, what can you as a single person then contribute to the whole? Because it seems so big.
A lot. Because if you help or inspire one person, one human being, in fact you are helping humanity. Yeah, because that one person or that one human being is a part of the whole, is a part of humanity. And of course we cannot focus our intention to 7 billion of human beings. I think there are 7 billion now. That's impossible. So start with the ones with whom you live. Your neighbors, your family, your colleagues at your work, the people in your street, that's the first duty. And of course, you can do a lot. If you start changing your mind, if you start focusing your thoughts not on the outer world and the world in which the me, the personality is the most important, but if you start focusing on, the spiritual world, on the world that is beyond the manifested world, then you change the climate of thought, the mental climate, and you can do a lot. And if you practice that, you will see your life will change, but as a result, also the lives of the people with whom you live will change. In the beginning, maybe they will say, well, that's a strange person. But if you continue and you show that it is real for you, they will ask you, what's the matter with you? Why are you doing this or why are you doing that? And then you can explain that you have an artificial life. So we are not helpless. On the contrary, we can do a lot, but we should do it ourselves and we should start with it.
Okay. There's a third question that just came in. It says, how can something be limited but still be immortal on the other side?
Well, it's the manifestation that is limited. So, for instance, I, as a person, as a personality, with a body, and with some personal characteristics. That is limited. Yeah, like a shadow is limited, because the moment the sun, goes to another spot, the shadow disappears. But behind the shadow, behind my body, behind my personality, is something which is in essence the boundless itself. So I will explain that in part 2 of the talk, as a center of consciousness, we call it the monad. As a monad, I have always lived and will always live, but in my manifestation, I'm limited. So if you focus your attention on the limit part of your consciousness, the part that comes and goes, well, then in fact you are like somebody who is building a house on the ice in the winter, forgetting that spring will come, the ice will melt and the house will disappear. But if you focus on the part that is stronger, that survives death, then you will live forever.
That's a nice metaphor. Another question came in. There are a lot of different ways of thinking. There are a lot of different ways of thinking what helping means. Can you tell something what is really helping from Theosophia's point?
Yeah, it's a good question. We think the best way to help each other is to inspire each other. So you must give the other the means, or show him that he has everything within himself, so that he is able to help himself or herself. Well, there's the famous proverb that you can give somebody a fish and then he will eat one day, but you can also teach him how to fish, and then he can eat forever. Yeah. So if you teach somebody, inspire a person, give him the information, point to the real part of his consciousness. We like signposts, like signposts. We cannot learn for another, and nobody can learn from me. I have to do it myself, but I have teachers, and there are other people who inspire me and who show me what to do, how to do, and that's the best way of helping. You don't help a child to make the homework. You help a child to teach how to make the homework and to explain something, etc. So that is, in our vision, the best way to help. And of course, there is an accident or somebody have to go to the hospital, etc., etc., you help him to go to the hospital. But the best way to help is to teach somebody, to show him his inner potentials, and so he's able to live a worthy and meaningful life.
Yeah, that was it for now.
That is it. All right. Well, the second fundamental truth is cyclicity. Cycles are so common that we hardly think about them. There is a cycle of day and night, 24 hours, in which the Earth rotates on its axis. The annual cycle of 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, autumn. There is a cycle that results from the Earth rotation around the Sun, 365.25 days. There is the cycle of 28 days, the period in which the Moon revolves around the Earth, a cycle associated with the menstrual cycle of women. There's the cycle of ebb and flow. There are cycles so huge that we hardly notice them, such as what is called the Messianic cycle, a cycle of 26,000 years, 25,920 years to be precise, which is related to the rotation of the Earth's axis, which every 2,160 years during the spring equinox of Mars 21 points to a different point in the cosmos. And there are many, many, many more much larger, but also much smaller cycles. Each cycle has periods of activity and passivity. Take the cycle of waking and sleeping. Every morning when we wake up, our period of activity begins. We can grow in knowledge, abilities, skills during this period. In short, we grow in consciousness. And when that active period ends, we enter the resting phase of sleep to continue growing and learning at a slightly higher level next day, be it that we have indeed learned something the day before. This cyclical movement goes on for all beings, but the second basic truth tells us more. And to understand it properly, we must also observe the first fundamental truth, the boundlessness, the boundless principle which is eternal, omnipresent, and immutable. Well, in the secret doctrine, the second fundamental proposition is described as follows. The eternity of the universe in toto as a boundless plane, periodically the playground of numberless universes, incessantly manifesting and disappearing, called the manifesting stars and the sparks of eternity. The appearance and disappearance of worlds is like a regular tidal ebb of flux and reflux. Oh, that sounds rather complicated, and it requires a thorough study to get a proper understanding of it. Well, let's take a look at it. First, that eternity of the universe in toto. A bit of curious wording. What is meant by it? Well, we compared the boundless to an ocean of being, a boundless ocean without shore, without bottom or surface. Well, that's the eternity of the universe. That is what we call space, not a space, but space per se. And by that we may mean something different than what is meant by it in scientific circles. There they see space as a container of something you put something in, a receptacle, as it were. But if space would be a receptacle, something into which you can put something else, then it could never be infinite. In Theosophia, by space is meant the boundless all, the eternal, infinite all, the omnipresent unity. Space is. And think not only of what we can sense, space is also on higher and lower planes, that is more ethereal, nobler areas, and in areas that are coarser. Like that metaphor of the ocean, it's boundless, it's endless in all directions, and you can even ask yourself the question whether you can actually use a word like direction. Space, then, is a fullness of life. There is no place in space where there is no life. Yes, you can even say that space is life itself. Helena Blavatsky quotes an occult catechism in the Secret Doctrine. What is it that ever is? Space, the eternal anupadaka. Anupadaka means parentless. What is it that ever was? The germ in the root. What is it that is ever coming and going? The great breath. Then there are three eternals. No, the three are one. That which ever is one. That which ever was is one. That which is ever being and becoming is also one. And this is space. What is it that ever was? Space, the eternal anupadaka, that means parentless, without parents. And remember what is said about Allah. He's not begotten. Therefore, he is parentless. Space is not begotten, for it was always there. What is it that ever was? The germ in the root, and that means the essence of the essence, the most essential principle of life, the boundless principle, the Tao of Lao Tse, that is always there. What is it? That is ever coming and going. That is that periodic movement, the great cycle, the flow of life, the wave of life that manifests periodically. And then it withdraws. The great breath, it is called here. So space is that which always was and is infinite duration, and periodically a movement appears in space, a periodic appearance, but that movement, the cycle, is equal to space itself. Let us recall the metaphor of the boundless ocean. In that ocean of life, in space, a whirl, a vortex, a wave is created. That is the beginning of manifested life. Perhaps of a galaxy, or a solar system, or a planet, the beginning of a cosmos. But, of course, that vortex, or that wave, remains part of the ocean. It is never separate from it, and therefore, in a sense, it is the same as the ocean. Moreover, it is certainly not the case that this vortex is there for the first time. There is no absolute beginning. The creation of that vortex in the ocean is the consequence of the previous vortex, and it will result in a new vortex. You see, cyclic movement. So, there is no creation in the sense of making something out of nothing. That is a scientific and philosophical absurdity. Every creation, from cosmos to man, from atom to star, is always relative in the sense that it is the consequence of a previous existence. Let's take another look at the second proposition. See if it's clearer now. So in the boundless space, galaxies appear and disappear. Solar systems, planets, humans, that cyclicity applies to everything. And that which appears, the being that appears, is called a manifesting star or a spark of eternity. What could be meant by that? By this is meant an entity that can possibly exist. So from atom to human, from mineral to star, every being is such a spark of eternity, a wave in the ocean of being. And these sparks are sometimes referred to by the term monad. A monad is a center of consciousness which is essentially boundless, because being a spark of eternity, each monad is therefore also eternal. It has always existed and will always exist. Such a monad has periods of activity and passivity, like the ebb and the flow of the sea. In those periods of activity, there is growth, and that's why you can call a monad a pilgrim, an eternal pilgrim, who is constantly learning more of space because it is constantly developing more of the inherent faculties within itself. And developing or bringing to development means that the monad makes those inherent faculties active. Now, no doubt it will be clear to you that between a man and a god, and between a plant and a star, there is quite a difference. In other words, not all monads are equal in the sense that they do not all go through an equal stage of development. Simply put, Everything is within the monad. But not every monad has developed the same faculties, has not the same qualities outwardly, has not taken the same qualities outwardly, has not made the same characteristics active. Think of the monad as a limitless suitcase, but some have taken a lot out of that suitcase, others very little. So monads in themselves are identical to each other, everlasting pilgrims, sparks of eternity, but as manifested beings, they differ from each other by definition. For would they, as beings who are in the active phase of the cycle, be exactly the same, then there would not be two or more monads, but only one. Well, now let us try to combine those thoughts of those monads, those sparks of eternity, with the idea of cycles. In the boundless space, a cosmos comes into being when a vortex arises in the ocean of life, and then an interaction between those monads arises. The monads that are more highly developed attract the monads that are less developed. There is a corresponding characteristic, for otherwise they would not be attracted. But there is also difference in development. Those more highly developed monads, call them spiritual monads or divine monads if you like, cooperate with the less developed monads, call them material monads. They cannot do without each other. And thus a hierarchy of monads arises, in which the more highly developed ones constitute the force, the spiritual impulse attracting the less advanced monads. A kind of magnetic field is formed, upon which those less advanced monads can manifest themselves. This seems very abstract, but look at your own body as an example. The human monad, you, creates a field, and on it manifests the billions of atoms and molecules and cells that make up your body. A magnificent collaboration. We cannot do without each other. And do you see the relativity of everything? The relativity of the formation of any universe. We, human beings, in an identical way, from the vehicle for divine form, the vehicle for divine beings, for the earth, for example, and the sun. In those universes, we are building blocks. We help to shape the vehicle of those beings, just as the atoms and cells form our vehicle. Think about it and see how you develop a universe of vision on life. We could say a lot more about it, but time is always limited when we're talking about such lofty subjects. But before we go into the break, I would like to give some of the conclusions that can be drawn from that universal vision on life. The first one: there are no absolute starting and ending points, and therefore death is not actually an end point. In fact, death does not exist, at least not that considered as absence of life. There's always life. There are always living beings, regardless in which state they are. However, they are always in different phases. Just as you continue to exist, you keep on living when you go from the living room to the kitchen, so you continue to exist when you fall asleep or die. Another conclusion: there are differences between beings, but in essence all are equal. Monads are identical to each other in their essence. So, cherish the differences, they only express the essential unity in another way. A third conclusion: there's growth, there is movement, there are still countless abilities that we have not yet developed. No reason for pessimism or doom and gloom. There is no reason to assume that there will always be war or always be injustice and chaos. We can make the world a better place. And four, there's always cooperation. We need each other. The more advanced beings need the less advanced beings, and vice versa. This thought will make us respect every other human being, whether further developed than us or less developed than us. And you see, although Theosophy may be difficult and is difficult in its deeper details, the conclusions for your life are simple. You can experience this for yourself as well. Think for yourself whether there is an absolute beginning or an absolute ending point. As an example, take the birth of a human being. Is that an absolute starting point? Well, think about it. Is it logical to suppose that all your faculties are created at birth or at the conception? Or is it more obvious that you have them from the past, alive, past with you? Isn't that why there are differences between people? Because they have developed differently, unpacked different aspects from the moment they are. But, and you can experience this too, are we not in the depths of our being the same life? Don't we all have the same desire to live a happy and meaningful life? We evolve, we all grow, and some grow faster than others. And in doing so, we need each other. About this cooperation, the third fundamental proposition tells us much more. It complements the universal vision of life. More on that after the break. So there's now a 3 minutes break, and ask your questions again, and I will try to answer them in 3 minutes. So see you in 3 minutes. Astrid.
Yes, we have some questions. The first question is, what is it that creates cyclic movement?
Yeah, the entity, the being, the consciousness. The consciousness has periods of rest and periods of activity. So, for instance, when I go to sleep in a few hours, and then I wake up, and if you look from a distance from it, and then you see a cycle, and who creates that cycle? That was me. So some cycles are so big that we cannot see the force behind it. But in the same way, the cycle of the Earth, who is in 24 hours rotates on its axis, who creates it? Well, the entity, the consciousness behind the Earth. What is the cycle of the sun? Who creates the cycle? Well, that's the entity behind the sun, and so on. So it's a consciousness, the second fundamental proposition, that withdraws from manifestation, and that's the period of rest. We call it death in our human language, or sleep, but it's just the passive side of the cycle. And then after a while, and that while may be 8 hours or a couple of billions of years, then the entity comes back, and that's the active phase. So it's the consciousness, the entity, the being that creates the cycle. And because everything is alive, an atom, a particle of an atom, that's why there are so many cycles.
Yeah. So can you say that when an entity dies, you were talking about the field that it creates to attract the other atoms, molecules. So when that disappears for some time, the field is gone, and the atoms are released or let go?
Yeah. If you look from a distance to, let's say, one human being, and you don't perceive that behind the body is the consciousness, then you see in 24 hours a period of rest, when we are asleep, and a period of activity. But if you're not aware of the fact that that body is the vehicle of a consciousness, a human being, then you see a cycle, but you don't know why. But there is a force behind it. And that's why we see cycles, for instance, in the sunspots, it's 12 years or something. And what produces it? Well, that's the consciousness behind the sun, or the consciousness within the sun, one of the divinities of the sun. But we cannot perceive it, and we see only the phenomenon, but not the force behind the phenomenon.
Yeah. So there's another question on cyclicity. Thoughts also keep coming back to us. It is better to forget certain thoughts that are not noble, or you can change them in some other way, but it seems quite difficult to manage that.
Yes. Well, the example of thoughts, you can clearly see that thoughts are living beings because they appear and disappear in a cyclic movement. If you, for instance, if you are going to write your thoughts in a diary, then you will notice that some thoughts are coming back in a certain period of time. To give an example, so in the halfway December, a lot of people are thinking some kind of thoughts, Christmas, etc. And those thoughts disappear to come back in another year. And the first beautiful day in spring, a lot of people have some kind of thoughts. Maybe they're thinking about the holidays or whatever. So that thought has a period of appearance from a year. But if you stop smoking, the thought of a cigarette will come back in every minute or 2 minutes. So the fact that thoughts are living entities, are living beings, and they come back cyclically, you have to use that fact to change your thought life, to change your mind. You have to put another thought behind the thought you want to get rid of. For instance, let me give the example of you're addicted to cigarettes and you don't want to smoke anymore. So the thought of the cigarette will come to your mind, and then you have to think another thought and to put it behind it and give your attention to the second thought, and then that thought of the cigarette will come back without any doubt because it's a living being. But the second thought is behind it, like a train. You put some behind the train, etc. And you give wagon, and you give more attention to that second thought, and that's the way you let the first thought die out, because it is not nourished anymore. It doesn't get any food anymore. And we teach that in our course, Universal Wisdom. And it's very important because you have to control your mind, your thought life. So just give it an experience. Just think about the thoughts. Just write down in your diary the thoughts you think, and you will see they are cyclically coming back.
Okay. There's one last question that came in. And the writer says, I think of a tree where new leaves appear after every season. How can I recognize that something reappears cyclically and it's not a one-off appearance?
Well, in the case of a tree, you see that there is a kind of death or a kind of passivity during the winter or autumn. I'm not a biologist, but they told me that even I don't know if you call them veins in a tree, but all the regular processes are stopped in a tree during autumn. It is almost dead, you may say. And then at the end of the winter, beginning of the spring, it awakens again. So absolutely new and absolutely old doesn't exist, because the leaves the tree is forming are new leaves, but they are the result of the spring, the previous spring. So it's the same as a human being. I'm going to sleep tonight and tomorrow I wake up, but I'm not completely new. No, I'm the same in a way as yesterday, but not exactly the same. I hope so, because I've learned something, I hope, today. So tomorrow I'm a little bit different. Maybe a very little bit, but I'm a little bit different. So I'm not completely new, but I'm not the same as yesterday. In my new reincarnation, I am the same as in my old reincarnation, plus all the things I've learned. And if I've learned a lot of things in my new reincarnation, I will be more different than when I've learned a few things. So you have to see it in a slightly, stream of consciousness, not a sudden change or a sudden thing that is completely new. Completely new doesn't exist, because it always has a previous existence. And how can you recognize it? Well, just stay close with yourself. Ask yourself a question: are you the same today as you were 10 years ago? So there is one thing, one element, the monad we call it, the force, the conscience behind the manifestation. And that consciousness, that monad, is going from one stage to another. So it's changing, it's dying. Some aspects are dying and some new aspects are born, but the aspects that are new are the consequence of the aspects that are old. And you can recognize that within yourself. You are not the same as when you were 2 or 3 or 5 or 20 years. But the force behind your manifestation is still the same. You're still the same stream of consciousness. So it's a little bit difficult when they asked the Buddha if there was an eternal element in a human being. He stayed silent. He didn't give an answer, because he explained later to his students, his more advanced student, any answer I will give, they won't understand it. But if you say there is an eternal element in a human being, you may think that there is something that never changes. But that's not true. But if you say there is not an element within a human being, then you may have the impression that one day you will die. And that's not true either. But there is something that in the heart of the heart of the heart is the boundless self that is going from phase to phase, from always growing, always more expressing the inherent potential, the boundless possibilities that are within a human being, or within every human being. So there is what we call a relatively immortality, relative immortality. It's a complicated answer, but it's a complicated question.
Yes, yeah. Okay. That was it for now.
Okay. Well, the first 2 fundamental propositions give already a very broad view on life.